Georgia O'Keeffe. Georgia O'Keeffe was born on November 15, 1887. She was raised on a farm near Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. From an early age, she knew that she wanted to become an artist. Georgia O'Keeffe went to the Art Institute of Chicago. Then she lived for several years in New York City. She painted many of the city's buildings. She said, "One can't paint New York as it is, but rather as it is felt." How do you think the city made her feel? Although she lived in the city, Georgia O'Keeffe began to study flowers, plants, and leaves. This is a painting of a cabbage leaf. What does it remind you of? She began to paint flowers. When asked about her flower paintings, Georgia O'Keeffe said, "Most people in the city rush around so they have no time to look at a flower. I want them to see it whether they want to or not." She started to paint her flowers up very close. She got so close that it was hard to tell what they were. They became abstract. Abstract is an art piece that is made up of colors, shapes, forms, and lines. When you can't tell what something is, it is abstract. In 1929, she visited New Mexico with one of her best friends, and it changed her life. She was inspired by the bright blue sky and open landscapes. She began to paint the land and flowers together. How are these paintings the same? How are they different? These paintings were created by kids who were inspired by Georgia O'Keeffe. Which one is your favorite? Do you feel inspired to create? Let's go to the drawing board. For this project, we're going to be learning how to draw the structures for 4 different styles of Georgia O'Keeffe watercolors and learn how to paint them. For this project, you're going to need a watercolor pan, a medium and small brush, a variety of different crayons, a pencil. I have a sheet of drawing paper and a sheet of watercolor paper, and a little dish of water. So we're going to learn how to do a little thumbnail sketch of each kind of flower, and then you're going to be able to choose whatever kind of flower you want and then go ahead and paint it. So I want to take about 1/4 of my paper, and I'm going to make just a small rectangle, not too tiny. You can see how it's 1/4 of the size of this paper. Now as I go to look at this, Georgia O'Keeffe really zeroed in on flowers, so I really want to zero in on it as well. So I'm going to start with just a little circle, and I'm going to then just add some star shapes going off. You're going to have 5 or 6 of them. So I just have some general star shapes happening. And then I've got just a zigzag line. And you'll notice there's these kind of rectangle shapes coming off. So I'm going to add in some rectangle shapes, kind of just spreading them around. So you can see I have a very close-up of this poppy flower. I'm like completely zeroed in on it. Now I can go ahead and start to make some petals. And so I come to one of these rectangle shapes, I come to the outside of it, and I'm just going to put in a curved line. And I do the same thing on the other side. So now I have a close-up of my petal. I'm going to come into this one, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just put in a curved line and another curved line, and I go clear out to the edge of my paper. I'm going to do that all the way around, where I just come in and make curved lines. And so now I have that one zeroed in. So that would be one style of drawing. And let's try another one now. So we're going to go to this style. So once again, I'm going to make a little thumbnail rectangle. Now for this style, it actually starts with a little stem. Then we have this kind of squishy shape up above. Now we're going to go ahead and make this interior shape. So I'm going to just come up a little ways. So like if here was my center, I'm going to come up about halfway and I'm going to go over and I'm going to make a dot. And you're going to see that this one is coming from just off of that corner and over a little ways. So I've kind of laid in my path. And then I'm going to take and put in a slightly curved line and a slightly curved line. Now my other one is coming straight across. I'm going to put in my dot. And it's also coming a little ways over from that corner. And this time I'm going to come in and meet in with that one. And I add in another curved line. I'm going to put in a waved line connecting these together. And now I'm going to add in a big petal from the outside. So I'm going to come underneath. This one's actually going to go off my paper. It's going to be just the corner of this paper. I come up to the corner, I almost touch, and I come down. I'm going to go up there, I'm going to go all the way up to that corner. And this time I'm going to come onto this side, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come and touch down. I come and wave out and finish that one. So there is another close-up. This is also a poppy. So I have two different ways or views of drawing a poppy. And note that this part up here is actually a flower as well. So all of this would get colored in the end. And let's try this one now. We're going to take, once again, and make our rectangle shape. So with this one, I'm going to go to the very center. I'm going to draw my circle. And I've got these kind of like little triangle shoots coming off, and you can have 5 or 6 of them, whatever you would like. I'm going to put in 5 of them. And you'll know this is pretty big. Like this is almost like a third of my paper. And now I'm going to put in these petal shapes. So I'm going to come to one of these. I'm going to go on the inside and I'm going to put in a curved line that actually ends and part of this petal is going to be hidden. Then I come in and I put in another one. And then I'm going to skip this one and come to over onto this one. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put in a curved line and a curved line. I'm going to do it over here too. I'm going to come into here. I'm going to put in a curved line. A curved line. Now this one is giving me a little bit more room, so I'm going to actually take and put in a big curve there. And I'm going to go all the way around where I take and I put out 2 curved lines, and then I circle in. It's almost like you're making a big rounded triangle, but sometimes the top of the triangle gets hidden. And then if I'd like, I can in these in-between places add in more petals. So I could take, if I wanted to, add in a petal here. I could add in a petal here. So you could add in petals or you could keep it really, really simple. So it's your choice. So you could totally add in or leave it with fewer petals like I did in that one. Now the last one I'm going to teach you is how to do an iris. And this is actually a vertical drawing. So I'm going to take and turn my paper this way for us to be able to see. And I'm going to go ahead and once again draw my rectangle. And now I can start to draw this structure. This one's kind of wild. I'm going to find the middle and drop down a little bit and make a circle. And then a circle shape over the top. And then it's got a triangle curve and a triangle curve. And then this also drops in. So that's the inside of the flower. And then it has these almost like little wings that got put on there. Now I go up above this and I put in a dot. And from this dot I pull down and come out a little bit. And I pull down and then I come out a little bit. So I almost have the whole structure of my flower. Now I'm going to put in these outside structures. So I'm going to come in underneath and just draw a curve on one side and a curve on the other. And you're noticing that this is symmetrical. What I do on one side, I do on the other. So they are the same on both sides. Now I'm going to come to where these parts meet, and I'm going to do a curve and go up, do a curve down and go up. I'm going to come up above it and do a curve going up and a curve going up. And there is actually a shape coming up over here and a shape coming up over here. And then a big arch over the top. So this is a close-up of another style of flower, so that an iris. Now what you want to do now is you're going to decide which of these flowers you are most interested in drawing big. Now once you have your flower drawn, now you're going to go ahead and play with your crayons. And you're going to be thinking about whether you want to do your flower in cool colors or warm colors, okay? So I did this one in cool colors. So you have to think about cool colors as being blue, greens, purples, and warm colors as being reds, yellows, and oranges. So I'm going to do cool colors, but as I go to do this, I actually really want some warm colors to contrast and that yellow in the middle. And you'll notice I also kind of have these darker blue lines that are holding my flower. So, and in this one, you're going to notice I've got some purple and blue for that dark spot for the contrast of what's in the center of the flower. And then I took some red in on the edges. And each one of those I went and I did that. You'll see in this one I actually took some blues and purples in my crayon and some red outlining for my flowers. And in this one I took in some yellows and some dark blues and purples in my outlining. So the crayon outlining is going to kind of help hold the shape a little bit. So, and it also will give you some opposite colors if you want some opposite colors. So I'm actually going to take my crayon and take some oranges and yellows into areas that I want in the opposite color spectrum. So since I'm using cool colors, I'm going to use some warm colors in the center of my flower. So I'm making a wax resist. And I actually am going to do a little bit of outlining of my colors. But what I kind of like to do is I like to go a little ways out. And you'll notice I still have all these other lines. And then I think it's kind of fun to actually switch in to another kind of a blue. I don't know if that one is going to give me very much contrast there. Let me see if this one's any different. Oh, this one's a little more purpley. So if you want to play with a couple of different kinds of crayons, you can as you go to do your outlining. And this is going to just hold the space for you. Now at this point, I'm actually ready to start to do some painting. So I'm going to pull up my water and pull up my watercolors. If you'll notice in this one how I've got blends of blues and greens happening. And I have in this one blends of red, oranges, and yellows. You're also going to notice how I kind of have these lightened areas in this one and in here. In this one, I actually used some white crayon resist, and then afterwards I actually took a paper towel and like pushed down a little bit. So that is another method you could use. So I'm actually going to take a little bit of white resist in and around in the center of this flower. So if there's any place you want to use white resist, you can as well. I used a little bit of white resist in this one too. I took some white into there and a little bit of white into there. So that's just something you could think about and play with if you would like. Now I'm ready to start doing some painting. Now, one of the things I really like to do is I like to use the method of wet on dry. So my paper's totally dry right now. And if you want to go do the whole watercolor demo, it might be useful to you to really understand how the watercolors work. It's in one of my previous videos. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use a really wet brush. So my paper's dry, but you can see my brush is really, really wet. And then I'm going to come up to the top and I'm going to start, and it doesn't matter what color I'm using. So I'm using blues and purples and greens in here, but you can do any color combo you want. This could be reds with oranges and yellows as well. So I put in my darkest color, or one of my colors. And if I want to get and add in another color, I can. So I'm actually going to get a little bit of purple here, maybe not quite that much. I could add in some purple in as well. And then I clean my brush really well. And I don't jam my brush down, I go back and forth gently with it. I'm going to wipe it on the edge. And now I'm going to take and kind of pull this in. And I might add in a little bit more water if it's not quite moving yet. And you can see how it starts to maneuver in here. And I'm going to pull it all the way in. And I've got some wax resist happening, so it's not going to go all the way there. And it's okay if I go into my orange. And I'm going to kind of play with pulling lines down a little bit into here. And I want a little bit more blue. So I play with my color. And then I take a paper towel and I can pull a little bit out of my center. And then if I want to add a little bit more in, I could add in some lines. And at the very end, I'm actually going to take some paint, some warm color into here, but I have to wait until this entire thing is dry. So once I do one petal, then I can go on to my next. Now, I might want to wait to do this one because this one is really wet. So I'm going to skip and go to this one, and then I'll do this one, and this one. And then once they're dry enough, then I'm going to do these other ones as well. So let's get our flowers painted. Now, once I have my basic flower painted, now this has to completely dry because I want to do warm colors out in here. And by doing warm colors out in here, my flowers is going to really pop out. And then I'm also going to be taking some warm colors into my center. Now, if you did one of these kinds of flowers, if you use warm paint, then you're going to have to let it dry as well. And I really did this exact same method here that I did here. I just used red first, and then I took in some orange, and then I took in some yellow. So you can see how I outlined it, or like did a big red swash, and then I took some orange in, and then I took in some yellow. And then I kind of allowed them to blend together. So in each of these sections, I just played with warm colors, and you can see how I did that in that one as well. Okay. So this is going to dry for a minute, and then we're going to go ahead and finish it up. So now that it's completely dry, I'm ready to go ahead and start painting my background. So I'm going to be doing the opposite of whatever color I use. So I use cool colors, so I'm going to use warm. Now in each one, I did that. So in this one, I painted my flower with warm colors, and I did my background with cool. In this one, I did warm colors, and I did cool. And this one, I actually was so close to my flower, I didn't even have a background. So it ended up being all in cool colors. So that might happen to you as well. So I've got cool colors, so I'm going to work on warm colors. And I'm also going to take some warm colors into my center now too. It's totally dry, so I can really control it. The other thing I did is I got clean water. That's really important, and I have a clean brush. I'm also going to be going off my page, so I have a scratch sheet underneath. So I'm actually going to start this time just taking some color into my center a little bit. I'm going to brighten this up a little bit. The crayon really held it for me, which was really, really nice. And if I wanted to, I could take, a little bit of orange in here. I could totally play with this. Now, as I go to do out here, I'm going to just play with amongst my warm colors, so I can play with red, orange, and yellow, or I could just use one. It's totally up to you what you decide to do. Now, since this is totally dry, they're not running into one another. My yellow is staying out here, and my blues and purples are staying in here. Got a tiny bleed happening, but it's very, very minor. And now I'm going to let the entire thing dry. I hope you enjoyed learning how to paint flowers today. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.